Welcome back to EXPLORE-OVERLAND, and today we're at the Cobaw State Forest, which is not far from the town of Lancefield in central Victoria. And I'm on pole track. I'm heading over to the Smiths campground and to the start of Alcorns track, which is off Smiths track. And we're going to go for a bit of a tour, as we always do, without all the gear. We're on a set of Michelin 750 16s, and the vehicle's got a 50mm lift and it's got a rear Detroit locker in it. All the tracks at Cobaw are starting to be upgraded. There's already quite a few done, and I can see Alcorns and Muirs being next on the list. And the day I went out here filming this, they just closed off Soil Pit track, which is one of the great tracks in the Cobaws. It's got a lot of really bad erosion, ruts and that sort of thing, and a lot of great places to test your four-wheel drive. But that's now got closed signs. I'm hoping to get back before they close the other end of Alcorns track off. I'd like to take the Discovery up there the way it is, just with one locker and the skinnies, and drive the track straight up without taking any of the bypasses around any of the boulders and that sort of thing. I've started filming about maybe 300 metres in here on Alcorns track. I've got the Michelin XZLs let down to about 10 psi. There's no beadlocks on these rims. The Discovery's a pretty light vehicle. It doesn't push the tyres off the rims like the bigger, heavier cars do when you're cornering. Now, there's major rock clearance issues all the way down Alcorns and Muirs, but it's the sort of track you can get back, in a capable vehicle, and you can work your way around all the rocks and the obstacles. The Discovery smacked a few on the way down, but it didn't hold it up at any point. I was lucky to get about a 12-hour gap in the weather. Beautiful blue skies on this day. But it had been raining for a week prior to heading out to filming this. The track was still pretty damp, but it wasn't treacherous or anything like that. Coming up to some pretty decent erosion here, and these ruts are pretty deep. If you slide into them, you'll definitely do panel damage up against the wall of them. But there's bypass tracks here. You can bypass this whole section. One of the great parts with Explore Overland is I get to be outside a fair bit, and I get a fair bit of fitness setting up cameras ahead and behind the car. They're obviously spending a lot of money out at Cobaw State Forest. A lot of tracks have been all upgraded. At the bottom of Muirs here, it's a virtual superhighway where it meets the private property now, getting back to the other tracks. It's probably about 3 cars wide. They've cut down a huge amount of trees to make the track that wide. It's not really hard work for the Discovery. The old TDI is just ticking over, using very little fuel. You can drive around in them like this in the bush all day and the fuel gauge rarely moves. This is a great little test, this bit here. It's hard to see how deep the rut is, and it's hard to see just sort of what sort of incline it's on as well. The cameras just don't do it justice. I've got it here from a couple of angles. And it's one of the really enjoyable things about the Discovery the way it is. I mean, you can have twin diff locks and be running huge tyres and you drive this without even batting an eyelid. But it just brings in an extra bit of fun trying to work your way through in a vehicle that's pretty well standard, but very capable straight out of the box. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to drive out of it and up onto the high ground on the right hand side, and I'm just pushing the skinnies up against the wall and it's climbing it, but it's just having a bit of difficulty with how deep it is. And at $1,500, it kind of seems wrong that it's doing it so easy. It's the best $1,500 I've ever spent. And it was a one-stop, one easy payment. You'd be lucky to get a service for that in a new four-wheel drive. this bit here threw up a few challenges. I was trying to get down this bit here, and I probably could have got down there, but I run the risk of dropping down into there and having that granite there on the side just take the side of the car out. I had a couple of cracks at it, but I thought, let's try something different. And as with all of these type of tracks, it's very much a case of spot the sidestep when you get to stuff like this, where they've been torn off and jettisoned into the bush. Unfortunately, one of the reasons that a lot of these tracks are getting closed is because of people doing the wrong thing. When I got to the Smiths campground, there was still signs up for there'd been a four-wheel drive event held, and the signs were still on the trees, but there was just rubbish strewn around everywhere. It just doesn't look good for everybody. You can see those Michelin XZL military tyres really doing their stuff here on the way down with low pressures. I wouldn't have wanted to have crawled through the gap between the axle housing and the rocks here. And we're coming up to the end of the track here. There's quite a few big water erosion ruts just towards the end, and it's a little bit of fun before it's time to air up and move on. And that's it. That's the end of another episode. But stay tuned, because the start of the track over the other side of Alcorns is the real gnarly bit. It's got probably 150 metre section that's straight up and very rocky. And what I'm going to do with the Discovery is I'm going to try and drive it straight up. No bypasses or moving around or winching around the side of the rocks. We'll see how it goes. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.